Hi, everybody. Good afternoon or good morning, depending on where you are. I'm excited for you all to join us for this webinar around marketing personas in recruitment, one of my very favorite topics. Some of the big things we're going to cover today are really, what do you use a persona for? Why do you need it? How to build it, and then what you should be doing with it once you have a persona. So those are our big areas. Like Rachel mentioned at the top, we welcome any and all questions. Feel free to put them into the chat. I will see most of them if they come up, if it's something I can answer in the course of the presentation, I will. Otherwise, we'll save those for the end, and Rachel will feed them to me in the last few minutes to cover those things. So I want to start off kind of big picture on what even is a persona. And there's a lot of misconceptions about what personas are and what they aren't. So really just looking to kind of clarify that on the top. Basically, it's an individual fictional person that represents kind of a cluster of the people that you are trying to attract, your ideal candidates. We develop these based on market research and data. So often people might be thinking about doing personas without data. I definitely strongly encourage you against that. We'll talk about how to get that data. And personas really help us understand a little bit more about who we're going after, not just their skill set and years of experience and education, but who they are as a person, what's important to them in a career, what they do outside of work, what their family situation is, do they commute? All of those types of things can help us get a better picture of the ideal candidate that we're trying to attract. We use it to influence the content that we create, that you can put out in a whole host of different channels. And, it really, as a marketer, so talent marketer, it really enables you to kind of focus on a person. What does systems engineer Susie think about this, if that is your persona, versus this kind of collective everyone? Harder to really kind of hone your message. So it gives you that opportunity to really focus on talking to a person while they're a fictional person. It allows you to do that. And I think the last statement there is really important. It's not meant to represent a specific target, because we might develop this fictional person to be a Hispanic female does not mean that that is who we're going after specifically. Again, they're a representative of kind of a cluster of ideal candidates. So getting started today, I want to learn a little bit about all of you and your experience with personas. So I'm putting a poll up here for you to just go ahead and click on which of those answers best describes where you are, your organization is around using personas. So anywhere from you already have them fully developed and you're using them for content, to we're just learning, which is you're in the right place. And I just want to make sure I've got a good understanding of where everybody is coming from, so I don't take things too high level or too detailed, depending on what your background is and where you're coming from. So we've got a little over 2/3 of you have responded. So I'll give you another few seconds if you haven't had a chance to respond yet. All right, I'm going to go ahead and end that poll and share those results with you. Then you can see we've got well over half of you are just learning. So that is really encouraging. And a few of you have talked about it, but you haven't really gotten started. You need them. You might have a good understanding of what they are. We've got a few developing, some that have been developed, but you haven't had a chance to use them yet. So that is fantastic. That helps me understand where you're all coming from. So let me jump back into the deck. So why do you even need them? I see lots of names out there, folks that I know, whether they're current or former clients, folks I've worked with in the past. Many of you know I'm pretty data driven and I like the data behind it. So this slide's going to kind of focus on some data and results around using personas. This first one, which is data from HubSpot, and really does focus on consumer marketing. Candidate marketing is very much the same as consumer marketing. We're trying to get our opportunities in front of the right people. So really looking, increasing online leads by 97% and raising your site traffic by over 200%. So imagine if you've got 200% more traffic to your career site, or 97% more signups for your talent community if you're using a talent community, or your events, or any of those things. So there's really a great opportunity because your message is personal and specific to the people that you're after. You're going to increase that interaction. The next one, somewhat related, but this I find fascinating. This is from Marketing Sherpa. 900% more time spent on the website. So thinking about developing out a really robust career site, and I know many of you have those already, if you update that with your clear persona messages and the things that the people you want to attract are interested in hearing about, they're going to spend a lot more time on your career site, and they're going to double the number of pages that they visit. So you're getting phenomenal engagement, which is one of my favorite ways to measure effectiveness of personas, is how engaged your audience is. And then cost effective. This is a study Intel did. So again, it's consumer focused, but it's 48% more cost effective than not using personas. So if you think about that from your cost per hire or your cost per recruitment advertising, that if you don't have personas, it may take you significantly more spend in order to generate the same number of candidates, qualified candidates that you're after. And a few others that are not necessarily data-driven, we're really after, and this is kind of the core of building a persona, understanding the needs and wants and desires of your audience. What are they looking for in a job or a career or their next opportunity? What do they need to know in order to make that decision? Really understanding what influences their behavior. Are they more likely to respond to a video or a personalized message or a social media ad? You'll start to gather that data and understand so you can target your messaging and marketing in the right place. And then that developed targeted message based on the data and the research that you do in order to build those personas. So there's a lot of great reasons to create personas. And let's start with, how do you do that? So we break it down into these 4 big steps, from research all the way to design. And I'm going to spend a little bit of time on this slide, just talking through some of these key pieces. That research is the absolute most important thing. You need to do all of the things listed below there: data, surveys, focus groups, and interviews, to gather all of the information you need to build these personas. I strongly encourage you to not go into persona research assuming you know anything about those candidates. Even if you have been recruiting software engineers your whole career, you probably have a really good idea, but I really encourage you to go kind of blank slate and evaluate what's happening with the candidates, what the people that you're after are interested in. So doing this just internally is not enough. I've worked with lots of clients who seem to initially focus on, I'll just keep my software engineer example, we need to hire software engineers. We have a whole bunch of them here. So let me just analyze their data. Let me have them take the surveys, participate in the focus groups or the interviews. And those are interesting data points, and it's a really good start, but you're forgetting the fact that those people already work for you. So they already know about you. You've already attracted them to the company. You really want to be able to find out about the people out there that have the skills and abilities that you're after, that either don't know about you as an employer, or haven't considered you as an employer, or don't have a positive opinion of you. Those are the people we need to influence and understand. So the internal piece is important. It also helps you understand where you are starting from, but you really need to dig into that external data. And you can do that through, the simplest and most cost-effective with externals is usually surveys, being able to develop and conduct those surveys of individuals who have the skills and abilities that you are after. And you can do this a whole host of ways, depending on the client that I'm working with and who that audience might be. We sometimes are able to use Audience Builder under SurveyMonkey to find the people that we're after, to issue the survey that way. Other times we need to reach out to professional associations We have a client right now we're talking about doing an engagement with, and they're looking to hire veterinarians. I can't get to them through SurveyMonkey, so I need to go through some veterinarian professional associations to issue a survey that way. So thinking about where those people are. Focus groups and interviews help you bring life to the data that you get out of the survey, or the data that you get kind of externally about, the general demographics of the people in the career paths that you're looking at. Focus groups and interviews. So focus groups, we usually recommend about 6 to 8 people max in a focus group, an opportunity to dig in, because you're gathering information here in these surveys and through these additional means on, who these people are is from a career standpoint. What are they interested in? What are their career goals? How do they search for jobs? What are their expectations in the interviewing and selection process, to all the other things that they do, how they spend their time outside of the office, what's most important to them, and of course, where they spend their time online and or in any areas where you might want to be able to advertise to them, whether that's social media, news sites, sports sites, whatever that might be, or externally, if you do out of the home type of advertising, all your folks take the metro. I'm here in the DC area and people take the metro. Maybe it makes sense to advertise in the metro cars or the metro stations. So just looking through and finding all of that information. So you're going to get data on the survey, and then you're able to dig in those focus groups and interviews and put a lot more color to it. We might learn that, our typical target is married with 2 kids. We can get a little bit more. How old are those kids? What kind of activities do they participate in? What do you as a parent do to support them? Or what are your other hobbies? Are you a runner, a painter, a photographer, whatever those things might be? You start to dig in a little bit more deeply, so you provide life and color to the persona that you're going to eventually build in the design area. When you're talking about analyze, these are the themes that you're looking for: behaviors, preferences, and the demographics. Who you're targeting and what's most important to them. In a line, using external sources, like understanding what the audience on different social media platforms look like. I typically use Pew Research for that information and data. It helps me align where are the people that are in the demographic I'm after, which social media properties are they spending more time on, or which social media property is growing more rapidly with their demographic. Looking at those types of things. Your talent forecast. This is wildly important. Understanding internally what your company's plans are and forecast is for hiring. What are those key skills that are going to directly impact growth and opportunity inside the organization? What's happening there? Do you need to ramp up your hiring of a particular skill set by 200% in the next 2 years? Or are you branching out into new skill sets that you haven't actually recruited for before? So that data is wildly important when you're thinking about your persona design. And then that empathy and understanding, matching what those individuals are looking for in their career. Why would they change jobs? What's most important to them? What's important in their life? Matching that up. Almost every company has, social responsibility, charitable activities. If those are things that are important to your personas, you want to be able to align and highlight those pieces. And then you have the design, which is really giving them a bio and, an image that represents them, their preferences and their behaviors. And all of that goes into building a well-developed persona. So I'm going to give you an example, is the persona we use to recruit for my consulting team here at HireClix, the persona that we've built for ourselves. So, giving you a picture of who this person is. I hire consultants. When you read through Chris's story, you'll see that, he is a recruiter. He's been on the agency side. He's worked in corporate. He's getting a little fed up with challenges internally at large organizations and wondering if it's time to make a switch. Because my team has all former TA practitioners, this is really relevant specifically here. But since most of you are likely in TA or TA adjacent, you probably know people like this as well. You see the second paragraph also gives us more picture of what our persona of consultant Chris is doing. He's married, he's got the two daughters, he's involved in charitable work and the kids' activities, he's big into restaurants when he has the chance to go out, and he and his wife watch a lot of Netflix. So it's giving us a little bit more picture as far as who is this consultant, what else goes on in his life beyond just his job. And then we dig into a little more detail. We typically dig into these 4 areas. A lot of the work we've done in personas here at HireClix has been related to building social media recruiting strategies, but it can be used for just general recruitment messaging, general strategies. And we've had clients move beyond social as well. So, looking at lifestyle, we've gathered, what radio stations or music does this person like to listen to? You might discover that streaming music might be a great place to advertise. So we want to get them on the right stations if we're going to do a Spotify campaign or something along those lines. Digital behaviors, how does he communicate? He's mostly a text person. He's probably got his Snapchat folks. He uses both a laptop and a mobile device. On social media, where is he hanging out? What are the pages he follows? So these are things we might gather in the survey to say, he follows sports pages, and then we dig in whenever we do the focus group or the interviews to find out what sports pages. I'm here in the DC area, so maybe if I dig in with people here, their sports pages, they might follow Washington Capitals or the Washington Wizards or something along those lines. That just gives a little more color, a little more personality to the persona. And then what social media platforms does he typically use? LinkedIn, Instagram, and Facebook. So this is kind of the core of the persona that we have created that then we use to help us identify what are the messages, what we call it here at HireClix, the messages that matter. What's going to be important to consultant Chris that he hears and understands when he is presented with information about jobs on my team, as my example here. So, we go through that personas building, we think back to our interviews and focus groups, what did we hear people say? And then we align that with what is it that we can offer here. So that's exactly what you would do as you're building that persona. You would look at what's most important to my persona and what does my company offer. We have a lot of creativity, a lot of opportunity to think about things differently, collaborate with some amazing clients that are facing different challenges. We like to have fun. We don't believe in one solution, so the opportunity to solve the same problem, the same way doesn't exist. You'll always be doing it differently as we customize those opportunities. So these are the things that you start thinking about. What does this persona want? And what can we, as an employer, provide to them? And that's where you start to come up with those messages that matter. And each one of your personas would likely have a different set of messages that matter. And so this is really where you can start thinking about, okay, how do I build content around these messages, around what it is that my persona, consultant Chris, would like to hear about. And so you move into using the persona. Once you've developed it, you've come up with those messages. And there's really 6 key ways here that we encourage you to think about using your persona. The first one is to align those channels. And those channels can be social media channels. They can be channels where this persona typically does career research. That might be something you identify in your surveys and focus groups. Do they go to Glassdoor and Indeed reviews? Do they rely much more on friends or former colleagues that are current colleagues that can give firsthand accounts from people that they know? Where are they getting this information? Other online or offline places, for folks that I might want to target for my team here at HireClix. Conferences, recruiting and HR conferences might be a great place for me to advertise or to do some things, in person while we're there. I'm assuming we eventually get out of COVID and can go to conferences again, but that's a place that would definitely appeal to the persona that I'm after. So thinking about what are all those channels. And then you get into your content strategy. What are the key types of content that you want to create. Those could be job stories. So someone, kind of telling their day in a life story or what they do. It could be features specifically about things that your company offers that are important to that persona, whether it is your social responsibility or it's the benefits that you offer, or it's the specific type of really cool work that folks in that job get to do, or the type of client that they're working with. So you start to kind of come up with what are those types of content that we need to develop and use in order to communicate with this persona. So, you just think through those things. And then you also want to think about what is the medium? Is it photo? Is it video? If it's video, is it more authentic or is it a produced video? What are the things that are going to connect best with that individual? If you have a CRM that has talent community functionality, or you go back, throwback days where we just kept all that stuff on a spreadsheet, you might be able to use your CRM and its talent community kind of communication functionality. And I've got an example of this in a few slides, something that you might be able to leverage technology for. Job advertisements. I just want to call your attention to the fact that I did not call this a job description. They're really thinking about getting your jobs out there as true advertisements. Again, connecting with that persona. What is most important to that persona? Chris persona is really interested in the variety of work. So I might lead that job advertisement with, you're going to be doing a whole host of different types of projects, whether it's social media or developing personas, building an EVP, or tech selection, tech implementation, kind of the gambit. We know that's what's important to my persona. That's what I would lead with. If something is important to them that we don't necessarily offer, then I wouldn't necessarily lead with that. So this starts to get you thinking about, how am I going to write that job ad? What do I need to put in that first few sentences that are going to get the persona to keep reading? What are we going to do to make sure Chris clicks apply when he gets through reading the job ad? Tailored landing pages. This is a great approach for engaging with personas. And many of the clients that I work with, and I imagine in many of your organizations, you have 4, 5, 6 different types of personas that you might be after. Maybe you only have 2 or 3, whatever it might be. The information that persona 1 needs and wants and aligns with their career goals might be different than persona 2. So often we have found ourselves creating career sites that have pages and pages and pages of information. It's all great information, but you're expecting the persona, the person on your site, to go searching for what it is they're looking for. Where if through this research what each of those different personas are interested in, you can tailor those landing pages. You can start with a video about what's most important to them. You can make sure the content has the things that are most important near the top. It has an opportunity for them to be interactive, whatever that might be. But if each of those personas has their own landing page, you don't have to worry about whether the actual candidates coming to your site saw the important information. They got served it up directly because you directed them to that landing page, whether it's from advertisements, social media posts, whatever it might be, getting people engaged there on those landing pages. And the one in the bottom right is one I think we overlook a lot with personas. How do you use what you know about the candidates to drive that interview discussion, drive your evaluation as well? So these are 6 important areas for you to think about when you are creating that plan for using the persona that you have just developed. So I've got another poll for you. And this one is about how you currently advertise your jobs, use recruitment marketing. And this is a pick all that apply. So take a minute and kind of, let us know, where are you typically just advertising your jobs today? I know well over half of you are not yet using personas. So this is just telling us where you're advertising. Okay, I still see a couple of responses coming in. All right, I'm going to go ahead and end it and share these results here. I don't think anybody's surprised to see that 90% of you are using general job boards for advertising, and I guess many of those folks are advertising on Indeed. Niche job boards could vary based on who you're trying to hire. We've got a good 20% of you that have ventured into the programmatic ad platform space, which has really started to have a bigger share of recruitment marketing spend these days. Social media, this is encouraging. About 84% of you are advertising on social media, and it really is a great place to use personas. One of the things I love about social media is you can, advertising on social media is relatively inexpensive. You can see if you're getting results right away or not, and shift the money very quickly. You also have your just opportunity for organic posts that you don't even need to advertise to test how they are being responded to in social media. So it's a great way to try out some of your specific messaging by persona to see what kind of engagement you get before you start using that to maybe build out a landing page or redesign your career site or pay for advertising in a particular place. We've got other online, got about 10% of you still using some print. I mentioned out of home earlier, as recruitment marketing agency here at HireClix, we do see a lot of clients, depending on the type of roles they're hiring for, doing billboards or the tops of the gas pumps, those types of things that get in front of people, the metro stations I had talked about as well. So looking at what it is that you're advertising, there are some that really, really lend themselves to persona-based advertising. Your job ads, direct job ads, always will. Want to make sure we've got the messaging that's most important to your personas in front of them on a regular basis. So one of the steps was aligning channels. And this is just a picture if we're looking at social media for consultant Chris. We've got information about the cluster of prospective candidates who make up this persona, that typically a Generation X person, communities about evenly balanced gender-wise. And we've got a lot of folks that make up that persona that are married with kids. Most of them have bachelor's degrees. They tend to be somewhat suburban, have moved out of the inner cities. You all notice, and you will get the slides as well. I have a link there to the Pew Research Center, which is what I rely on to understand social media usage. And then you look at how they align well with LinkedIn and Facebook. So through the research, we uncovered that folks in this persona use LinkedIn and Facebook, and then we go and make sure that we're validating against social media data to say, we've got a pretty large demographic of users on both platforms that align with Gen X. We've got half the people on both platforms are making more than $75,000. So they've been beyond mid-career, depending on where they might be, what kind of degrees they have. LinkedIn obviously makes sense for consultant Chris, not just because we're reaching out to people about jobs and sharing the story about what it's like to work here, but also the industry that we are in. Most people in talent acquisition have a pretty good presence and are pretty active on LinkedIn. Facebook would be the second choice here, and probably in the last 2 years since we did the persona, you probably potentially consider Instagram. And then let me give you all this little tidbit. This is something that's been fascinating over the last few years as we've done this persona development. In all cases, and I'm pretty darn comfortable saying all cases. One of my consultants is on here that wants to contradict me, please comment. But in all cases, when we're finding out where people spend online, whether they are hourly workers in food service, cybersecurity folks in large government contractors, to service personnel in other areas, to finance and HR people, everybody's on YouTube. Everyone is on YouTube. What I don't see a lot of on YouTube is job advertisements. You get all kinds of advertisements on YouTube for everything you could ever imagine, but none of us are advertising our jobs on YouTube with any great regularity. I would encourage you, as you're doing your research, if you're uncovering that people use YouTube, you don't need to have a big YouTube channel. I'm not asking you to produce professional content. I don't even think you need to have a channel. You can just create short 15-second video ads that can just be still photography, still images with a voiceover that are relatively simple to produce, and put them out there on YouTube. YouTube has a whole host of different ways to advertise, also very cost effective. Many times, depending on where your ad is placed in YouTube, if the user presses skip this ad before the however many seconds run out, you don't actually even get charged. So there's your kind of big free piece of advice for today. Really consider YouTube, particularly if you're doing large quantities of hiring. It would give you a great opportunity. And how do you know where to advertise your jobs on YouTube? Well, you figured that out through the survey, because you've got a sense of what people are interested in. You know, they're into sports, or maybe you have folks that are into cars, lots of mechanics, depending on who you're after. You know, maybe they're watching, certain YouTube channels that, bring people back regularly. Find those things out. I would encourage you to include. We are going forward in all of our surveys questions about what YouTube content that they consume, so that we can be more targeted with those ads. So that's one that we have discovered over the last few years that seems to be pretty consistent, but you would have to pick the right YouTube channels on which to advertise. Once you know what you've aligned to channels, you know what channels you're going to go after, then you have to build a content strategy. And the one here is just an example, partially filled out. So you would look at, for consultant Chris, channel 1 is our career site. It's almost always going to be channel 1 for everyone. You want to make sure you have the right messaging on your career site. And so, we're not very large at HireClix, so we have one page on our career site. But if we were to grow and I, had a dedicated area for the consulting recruiting, these are the things that I would put on that career site. Career content related to career paths and the people, the team spirit, the camaraderie that we have here at HireClix. We'd have the messaging around what it's like to grow here, have some of the consultants telling their story of when they started and what they've been able to grow and do and have opportunities to experience. And the cadence talks about how often you need to, quote unquote, do something. A career site, we're not going to update every day. So that's probably something every two to three times a year. We want to freshen up the content, make sure we're looking at our data of what's being seen, what candidates are clicking on or viewing on our Google Analytics to help us understand what's working. And then you put those regular check-ins a few times a year on the calendar to update your pages, add new content, get rid of things that aren't resonating with candidates, or maybe new messages have emerged that you want to share. Channel 2, the example here is LinkedIn company page. We've determined through the research that the people that we're after are regular users on LinkedIn. They're pretty engaged on LinkedIn. They tend to follow a lot of different companies beyond just their own or their competitors. So we want to use LinkedIn to tell some of those job stories and also to talk about the rewards that you receive as a part of being a consultant at HireClix. So what are our messages? The variety of projects. Would have consulting team talk about the types of industries that we worked with just in the last 6 months to see the great variety. Because we hear from the persona that you want the opportunity to interact with different types of companies, and that's hard to do as an internal TA person. You work for your company. The training that's provided, what's been out there. We can have folks talking about the social media training that they've gone to, the presentation skills training that some of the consultants have done, and then benefits programs. As we look at the persona and dig in a little bit more deeply, Chris is married with 2 kids, understanding that there's you don't pay a cent for healthcare here at HireClix. That's something we probably want to put to the front, and that would be really important. And we probably want to get some updates or some stories out there 2 times per week. This doesn't have to be a daily thing, but that's the type of cadence that we think will work the best. And then you go through each of your additional channels, whether it's another social media platform, or it's the Glassdoor review site could be a platform, or Indeed review site that you want to use. And you would work through these things. You'd get your content components, and you develop these based on what you know about the persona. What's most important to Chris is we want to be able to sprinkle these topics, and some will lend themselves better to something with video, on a shorter snippet. If we're using YouTube, we want just advertise about the job. We're just going to advertise when we have an opening, and here's what we're going to use with what is that call to action. So this is where you will spend a lot of time developing your content strategy, thinking through what platforms you're going to use and what messages are most important on each platform. I mentioned using the CRM or talent community. So if you do have a CRM and it has the ability to do kind of these email drip campaigns, depending on the amount of sophistication, this is the one we've kind of developed that we think would be most beneficial for Chris. Email 1 is going to talk about the cool work that we get to do. It might highlight something that we've done in the last year. And then we see if the candidate has replied. If they have, we're going to move them into the potential candidate bucket, and we're going to have very specific outreach. One of us is going to contact them directly. If they don't, they'll get a next email that tells you a little bit about who you'll work with, which is literally features of the individuals that are on the team. Same situation. If they don't reply, we're going to send them another email about the flexible schedule or the unlimited paid time off, or whatever we think will make most sense here. And then repeating the pattern, we might end with speaking opportunities. We have found through our research that people like Chris, would be very interested in the opportunity to conduct or host a webinar, to speak at a conference, to share their knowledge and experience with others in the talent acquisition industry, or HR as a whole, or business executive, wherever that might be. So we build out these topics based on what we know about the persona and what's important to consultant Chris. Job advertisements. And this is the actual job advertisement for a consultant at HireClix. And you see we pull out some key phrases here that we think will appeal most to our persona. We have things about, you're very curious, you love to solve problems. You have a sense of humor. We like to have fun here at HireClix, and we like to work with clients who like to have fun. The multiple projects, multiple opportunities, different clients. You're not doing the same thing every day. Sense of mission and purpose, wanting to run into those burning buildings, as we call them in the job description. So these are things you're looking for when you're doing those job advertisements. Don't just take the template that shows up in your ATS and push post. You want to think about what is going to appeal most to this individual. What do I need to lead with? What do we offer for that individual that best matches what we know about their career interests and needs? And think through those things. Take the time to do this. I have a lot of passion around job ads. It does indeed need to be approached as if it is an ad, not a job description. Most candidates spend less than 15 seconds reading your job ad. So if you don't hook them in those first couple of minutes, or couple of sentences, with something appeals to them, they are just going to move on. You might get a view, but you're not going to get an apply click. You're definitely not going to get an application. So take those job ads that you're doing now, many of which probably read more like job descriptions, and think about how you can change that messaging around. Yes, you still need to have your requirements for the position. Those can all be a part of the job ad, but let's not lead with those. Let's really lead with something that's going to connect with them, connect with that persona and what we know about their wants, needs, and desires. Tailored landing pages. We do not have a tailored landing page for consultants, but this is an example of a client I worked with a couple of years ago. They're a social services organization in California, and they built a landing page specifically for these youth counselor jobs. They have group homes for boys that they're trying to help them get back on the right path. And we knew video was important. We're talking about what was most important to them here. The candidates that they wanted to attract had that passion for helping at-risk youth, but they also were looking for a stepping stone job into a job in social services, maybe getting their master's in psychology or moving into law enforcement. So those were kind of the two big things that our research really brought forward. So they led with that on the landing page. So driving the interview discussion. This is not something that many of us think to do. And it can be very challenging, particularly at a large organization, or if you have a lot of people that you need to hire in one time into a similar role. But I definitely encourage you to think about how you can use the information you know about the persona to be a part of your interview discussion. And there's several things here. What we know about Chris, we've kind of covered this already. What is most important for him? What is our opportunity? Our opportunity is for him to be a change agent, all the clients and projects, collaborative environment, engagements to speaker network, very important. So then we look at, okay, how do we evaluate whether Chris is a good fit for the team or not? And we know he fits the persona, but these are the things that we do. We don't have a case study, but we do a problem solving session with the team. And it's typically a problem we're currently working on for a client or have recently worked on for a client to get a sense of what their problem solving approach is, how they interact with the team. Other things that we're looking in here. So, we really divide that evaluation down into a couple of major components and treat those as different interviews, so to speak. But then we look at how do we sell the job? Because it's as much our job to sell the opportunity to Chris as it is for Chris to sell his self to us. So, what are the things that we want to make sure are emphasized? We review these things with the interview team before we get started with an interview. Those are all things that you can do. You might not be able to influence exactly how they conduct their interviews or what their interview evaluations look like, but you can really influence how we sell the job, making sure they're aware of what we know from a persona standpoint. But also at this point in time, you've probably talked to the candidate a few times, their specific needs. But this is an opportunity to reinforce with those involved in selection what tends to be most important. So, we have those selling points there we want to make sure that come out. So at a minimum, you can definitely use the what do we know about Chris and the how to sell the job to help influence what happens during that selection process and make sure that your persona is really aware, that your candidate is really aware of the places where we align really, really well with what we offer versus what they're looking for. So then you bring it all together. So there's a whole bunch of graphics here, to what is that overall approach? And you have your content plan and you have to start executing to it. But one thing that's wildly important is metrics. You need to be able to measure what's working and what's not. We might research and uncover that we need to do videos on Instagram, but we've done them for 3 months and we haven't really gotten a lot of engagement. So maybe we don't either have the right content, or maybe that's not really the right content type on the right platform. So there are 3 things that we always discuss you need to measure when it comes to branding and marketing. You have awareness. So this is really reaching people who do not know of you as an employer and making them aware. You have engagement. How are they connecting with you? Learning about you as an organization, engaging in any way. And then action, which is ultimately what we want to spark. We want them to apply for a job or join a talent community or share a job, whatever that call to action might be in each and every one of your posts. So you can measure your success by measuring the change in these things. So if you already have social media properties and you're getting ready to launch persona advertising on them or persona engagement, get your baseline. What are your average impressions or views? What are your average likes per post? all of those things follows. You want to help you gain awareness, so get your baseline and then start measuring those things for awareness. So we're just making people aware. We're just on their radar somewhere. Engagement, we really want to start making that connection, start getting them to acknowledge what we were putting forward does indeed resonate with them. So things you can measure there on social or comments and shares. If you use branded hashtags, you can track how those are trending. Response rates in general, whether it's to an email out of your CRM or your ATS, did they respond? Do they respond to any other advertising that requires some sort of response? Page visits. Chats conducted. If you use a chatbot on your career site or your landing pages, that's a great way to measure engagement. What was the change in the number of chats conducted on your page? And then finally is action. What are those click-through rates on your call to action? What are people actually doing? If you're doing events, virtual job fairs or virtual hiring events, are you getting signups? In-person events when those happen again? Are they joining talent communities? Are they clicking apply and completed applications? So you want to sit down and get benchmarks on some of these. You're not going to use all of them. It's going to depend on who and how you're targeting, which ones matter the most. But that's definitely where you want to start getting your baseline and then track that. Typically monthly tends to be frequent enough. If you have somewhat of a regular posting cadence or engagement cadence out there with the things that you are doing. So I wanted to share a case study for you. This was work we did with a global technology company, just about this time last year. And so they had a big challenge. They needed to attract more qualified candidates to key growth roles. That probably resonates with every single one of you out there. They were very heavy in their employee population with baby boomers and concerned about upcoming retirements. So they were looking to increase the pipeline of millennial and Gen X applicants. They had some unique parts of their employer value proposition that just weren't being communicated, were things that they believed were important for their candidates to know. And they really wanted to improve the use of social media. They had social media properties. It was mostly company news. They weren't really using it for talent attraction. So we partnered with them and did all of that research that we first identified, and we built out 4 personas for their key roles. And they're an interesting example because we initially believed we were going to have multiple kind of technology type roles. And so we conducted the research that way. But when we did, we found there weren't a lot of differences between system administrators and electrical engineers based on what they were looking for career-wise, or even how they spent their time online or whatever it might have been. But when we sliced the technology world by generation, we found there were great differences between the millennials in any kind of technology job and the Gen X folks in any kind of technology job. So we actually changed our focus kind of midstream and created 2 of the personas, technology millennial and technology Gen X. But that's what the data told us. So we followed the data. We had the key messages. We built out a full content plan. And then you see the year-over-year results. And so we actually were measuring the first 4 months, and this was very social media focused for them. The first 4 months on social media in 2020 compared to those same 4 months in 2019. So we just did a year-over-year comparison, and you can see, obviously we did more posts because we built out a whole content plan, but significantly more, but 344% increase in likes, 190% increase in shares. So imagine if when you just posted a job, let alone an interesting piece of content, if you got 190% more shares, because you don't know who was in that network of the people that are following you. So your reach is really able to multiply and expand tremendously. So that's just an example, particularly on social media, of what results you might be able to see in a very short period of time. It was really 4 months ending in May. So February, March, April, and May of last year compared to those same 4 months in 2019. So that just gives you an example of what you might be able to expect. And here is one of the personas. This is for Millennial Matt in the cybersecurity space. So we have a somewhat similar structure to our own, but giving some of his career background and what he's looking for, and then a little bit of what's most interesting to him outside of work. And that leads us to questions. So I'm going to pause, Rachel, see if we've had any come in.
Yes, Kara, thank you. We have. The first question is, do you ever create a way to nurture a longer term relationship with a Chris who may not be interested in speaking now? In other words, do you have ideas on how to keep a passive prospect in orbit around your brand?
That is a really great question. And I just opened up the questions, Marvin. Thank you for attending. It's good to see you. A great question. I think this is a big challenge, that kind of longer term engagement. And we typically recommend, you want to keep your persona engagement up on whatever platforms are bringing people in. If you do have that talent community, often, many of us are using talent communities just to send open jobs out to people. And it's kind of an automatic alert type thing to really think about what you can engage with based on that persona's needs. So, I'll use Chris as the example. If we had a CRM, we're definitely too small for that. And, my list of Chris's are in a spreadsheet for me, but, sending them out, a blog that someone on the team has recently published, or an interesting article in our space, just getting their opinion on it, inviting them. We've actually done this with both prospects and prospective candidates, inviting them to be a part of a panel webinar that we are engaged with, just making sure or they know where you're going to be and where and how they can engage with you. So I think there's things your CRM can help send those things out, and you can track whether they opened them or clicked on them, give you that type of information. So those are one of the ways. It's definitely hard kind of as they're orbiting around, but maybe tagging them on some posts on social media to ask for their opinion, getting them to kind of pop out and answer some questions and serve as kind of that expert role. Those are a few things that I think would definitely work. At scale, it can be challenging to really, target a few people, but, imagine, all of the people that, are in that talent community, and a company as large as yours, Marvin, you definitely being able to pull out and connect with a few of those people will really endear them a little bit more and keep them connected to you. It's a great question. Thank you.
Okay, next question. How do I know what roles to use to create personas?
This is a fantastic question, and we definitely get this one a lot. And typically when we start engaging with clients, they think they need like 15 personas. And I can understand what would take you there. You definitely have, a lot of needs. If you're a company of any size, you have, everyone thinks their roles are the most important. We really encourage you to take a step back and look at the strategy of the organization. Where is the growth of the company going to come from over the next 2-4 years, even 12 to 18 months, whatever they might be, where is that growth? What kind of roles are most important for the company to meet their strategic goals? This accomplishes two things. It connects your strategy directly to company strategy, which makes it easier for you to get budget money when you are asking for money to spend on things like advertising to your personas. So connecting it there, but it ensures that what you all are working on is really what's most important to the business. But it really brings that list of 15 type roles down to a more manageable number. So depending on the size of your company, that could vary. I think the most I've ever done for a client is 6, and those were a lot of different type of hourly roles. So we were looking at, some food service and some warehouse, some call center type roles. So, building out those types of jobs, but really look at what is the driver of growth for the company, because that's where you want to take your focus. And those are the people you need to engage, and you might need them to be floating around in your orbit for a while before they're ready to act, because they likely have lots of opportunities. So that's one of the things I would suggest you use.
All righty, the next question. What kinds of questions/content did you ask in your focus groups to get the information needed to make a helpful persona?
So those are great questions. So we typically start with the survey data. What did we learn from the survey? So always do your survey before focus groups or interviews, and we typically get along, for example, we give a relatively long list of, what do you like to do, outside of work? Where do you go? What are your hobbies? So if we get that a particular group of people had a lot of, sports related things, and it's just general in the survey saying playing or participating in sports. So when we get into the focus group, we're like, okay, what sports do you play or do you coach? With one client, we uncovered that a lot of them were coaching youth league activities. What are those sports? Why are they important to you? Where do you get your information about sports? Whether it's folks who are, runners or CrossFit people, or folks who play tennis or golf, getting that information. So really taking the things that are bubbling up from the survey. When you get to, a lot of people would say, they were looking to a career change because they wanted to grow into leadership. So we want to understand, what do they mean by leadership? Do they want to directly manage people? What exactly does leadership mean to them would be kind of the next deal to dig down into, because what you could see happen is they didn't mean manage people, they meant something different. And so now we need to make sure we're matching that up if it's available in the opportunity. So it's really starting with that survey. And you all have my contact info here on slides. If you want a sample survey, you're more than welcome to ping me and I can give you a sample of kind of where we start when we do surveys. I'm happy to do that.
And it looks like we have just one more question. How much effort does it take to create and manage content based on personas?
That is an excellent question. The answer is it depends, because I'm a big proponent in repurposing and reusing existing content. So I strongly encourage you, once you develop what are the stories we need to tell, what's the content we need to go after, to start looking at what already exists in your company, with your marketing department, with your internal comms people, whatever might be out there. Even stuff that was posted 2 months ago may still be relevant to your persona. So I encourage you to kind of start there. But then when you're looking to develop and create new content, we typically look at, someone managing all of this for 2 to 4 personas is probably at least a 20-hour-a-week job. It comes with content creation and follow-up. And if you get into social media, then you're looking at responding and replying and keeping that managed. So that's roughly, for some companies, it's going to be significantly more, and others, because they've got a lot of their internal marketing that they can just take, it'll be a little bit less.